This is the Hope Not Nope podcast,
where we answer your questions and share inspirational stories to fill your soul with hope.
Our mission is to empower hope to those who have been plagued by nope.
I'm Dr. Dylan Caswell.
And I'm Brandi.
And we're here to bring you out of the nope and into hope.
Welcome everyone to the next episode of the Hope Not Nope podcast. We're so excited to have you in and are thrilled that you are listening. Every podcast, we share hope stories. And so Dylan, why don't you take it away and share your hope story?
All right. So mine this week, it's a little bit more limited than some of the other ones, but probably not, because when I start sharing it, it'll probably take all these different forms.
And you'll get excited.
And I'll get excited. So what I've learned is that what we're seeking, we'll find. So if we're looking for good in the environment, we'll find it. So the other day, I'm driving back, and I'm driving through a not great area of Syracuse. High crime, high drug rates, just a bad area. And I look to the left, and I look over, and there's a Chinese restaurant. I see this grandma, and she's holding the hand of what I am assuming is her grandbaby. The grandbaby looked like it just figured out how to walk. And she's holding her hand, and she just goes, I have my window down. She just goes, 3, 2, 1, and they run across the parking lot.
Aww.
Her granddaughter, she's just trying to stay upright. She's kind of falling all over the place, but they're both smiling, and I could hear her giggle over all of the traffic, over all of the commotion. I could just hear this little child laughing of how much fun she was having with her grandma. So I looked at that and I was like, that is beautiful. I saw that. I hope other cars saw that. But I saw this gentleman that was waiting, holding the door, that was just watching this. And you could just see his frown turn into this beautiful smile, like showing the teeth kind of smile of just enjoying this moment. And then also, like, shout out to that grandma who was able to run with her. Like, that's what Hope Not Nope is about. That's what being a lifelong athlete is about, is those little moments that make your day so much better amidst all of the chaos. So that was my hope story this week.
I love that hope story.
What about you?
Mine actually involves kids too. I think kids often bring us so much joy and inspire us as adults. And I was visiting one of my friends, and they have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. And I was talking to my friend, their parents, and the 6-year-old just kept looking at me and waving at me. And I was like, no, I'm talking to your mom. And he would go from one room to the other and just try and get in like the headshot of where my eyes were with a toy basketball, like an inside basketball. And he would just be like, come on. And so eventually he like literally grabbed my hand and pulled me into the other room with his older brother. And I just stood and had my arms out in a circle, and they played basketball on me for probably a good like 10 minutes. And it was awesome because they're feisty, joyful kids. And they were just like dunking on each other, crossing each other up. Literally, at one point I was like, this is football basketball. It was awesome. It was in their family room. But I was excited because I think, sometimes when you go and visit your friend or your mentor or whatever, you want to just focus on them, but how encouraged their kids get when you like go and spend time with their kids, and the importance of entering into the things that, other people love. And so I just loved it so much, but, eventually I'm like, okay, I'm going to go like hang out with your mom again. And I had another friend with me, so it was kind of the three of us all talking. So my other friend really got to do most of the talking. And the kids, I think after I played basketball with them, they were so excited. So they went and they got their three ring binders that are completely full of basketball cards. And they're like, oh, I have 18 Jason Tatum cards, and I have like this card signed by this person and this. And it was just this awesome reminder of not just with kids, but adults. It's so important to enter into what other people love. But when you do that, it almost inspires them to then share things that they love and take it to one step further. But for me to then share what I love to them. And so that's my hope story this week of, enter into other people, the things other people love, even if you really don't want to and you want to be chatting with your friend, like go be the basketball hoop for a little bit, but then also give people the space to share the more intimate things that they love, the basketball cards, but If you're an adult, maybe it's something different, but it's just, I don't know, for me, that it brought me so much joy to see how excited those kids were this past week.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, it gives me the chills because Brandi and I don't share what hope story we're going to share on the podcast. We share our highlights of each day,
Mm-hmm.
but if it's something that we're like, oh, I want to save this for the podcast recording, we'll just like briefly mention it, but we don't talk before the episode of, hey, my hope story involves a kid, and then, oh, my hope story is going to involve a kid too. So it's so cool that both of our hope stories were evolved around the kiddos in the community.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? It's anointed, it's so special. So I'm excited for this episode. I think the questions ahead of us are really awesome, and so let's dive in. Our first question is from a listener named Abby, and they say, in pursuit of consistent hope, how do you handle bad days, days of discouragement, and or days with bad symptoms? Do you allow days where you just can't push through, or does that no longer occur to you?
Wow, this is a great question. And I'll start it off with a story and a thank you for submitting that question. And this story, I actually heard it from Ben Bergeron, who I'm not sure where he heard it, but it's the wise old farmer. So the story goes like this. There's a wise old farmer who has a son. His son's working on the farm, and the townspeople come and visit the farm daily. So they come, and one day the son forgot to shut the fence, and they had one horse, and this horse ran out. So the one horse they had on the farm is now gone. So the townspeople come up. They say to the old wise farmer, wow, that's really unlucky. You don't have a horse anymore. And the wise old farmer goes, huh, maybe. The next day, the horse comes back. It was off in the wild. It made all these other horse friends and brought them back. So now instead of one horse or 0 horses, they now have multiple horses. So the townspeople come back to the wise old farmer and they go, whoa, that horse went and met other horses and brought them back to your farm. You're really lucky. And the wise old farmer goes, maybe. The next day, the son is working on the farm. He falls, breaks his arm. Townspeople come up, they go, wow, son broke his arm, you don't have the help on your farm anymore. That's really unlucky. Wise old farmer says, maybe. The next day, that town breaks out into a war with the rival town. And the townspeople, they're drafting as many young adults into their military as they can. So their son isn't able to get drafted because he has the broken arm. The townspeople come up and they go, wow, your son didn't have to go to war. You're really lucky. And the wise old farmer goes, maybe. So the moral of the story is oftentimes when things happen, we don't have enough information to determine, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? And we see this happening often with symptoms. So now I'm going to kind of put this into 2 different components because we have acute pain symptoms and then we have chronic pain symptoms. But anytime we have symptoms, these symptoms are just a request for change. Or is your body saying, hey, you've had enough of that for today, let's back away from it a little bit. But it's a request. So we should become curious about that request. Now, when it's acute pain, that's when we back, I don't say back down, but that's when we start to become a little bit more conscious of what am I doing? So how do we know that it's acute pain? Well, let's say I'm going for a run and I go to make a cut and I feel this pull in my upper thigh and I'm like, oh man, I think I pulled my hamstring. There's some swelling, there's some redness, there's these other signs that there has been some tissue damage. In that situation, I'm not going to keep running because if I keep running, I'm just going to tear this more and I'm going to make the injury worse and then prolong the healing. So in that situation, we're going to respect those symptoms. We're going to respect it and say, okay, I know why I'm getting this. There's swelling, there's chemical inflammation in this area. I need to respect it and back down from it. Now, in the situation of chronic pain, this is where the script is almost completely flipped. This is where we're going to start putting life, meaning, memories, activities ahead of the pain. We're not going to let the pain dictate what you're doing throughout your day because it's already dictated you what you're doing long enough. And it's time to put you back in control of that. And in the book, we talk about what is pain because we all experience it unless you have congenital insensitivity in which you don't experience pain, but their life expectancy is like mid-20s. So pain really, it's a good thing for us to have when used appropriately. But when it becomes a chronic thing, it tends to be more of a threat or an actual loss of meaningful activity. So then how do we start to decrease that signaling? Well, we have to do meaningful activity. But how can I do meaningful activity if I'm feeling pain when I'm doing it? Well, that pain doesn't mean that there's damage. The pain doesn't mean that the tissue is being damaged any further, because the human body is made to heal. And when we get out of the way and really allow it to heal, it does incredible things. Like we talk about in the book, this principle of RICE, rest, ice, compress, and elevate, and how we shouldn't do that anymore, because what it's doing is delaying the healing process. And that's not just an opinion. The person, Dr. Gabe Merkin, who actually wrote about that and coined the term RICE in his best selling sports medicine book in 1978, in 2000, I think it was 10, he wrote, we shouldn't use this principle anymore because it's delaying healing. So our bodies are made to heal, and they're going to heal within a couple weeks. If we get in the way, then we'll say 4 to 6 weeks. If it's something like a tendinopathy, well, that's going to be a little bit longer if the person's loading or not loading. So there's levels to this. But in the situation of chronic pain, all these tests have been done. We know that there's not actual tissue damage there. It doesn't mean that they're not experiencing the pain. It doesn't mean that they're not experiencing the symptoms. What it means is that their body has become conditioned to some type of trigger in the environment that now is creating this behavior. So how do we decondition that response? Well, we have to condition it with other things. So we can't say, I'm not going to go for a walk today because my back is bothering me. No, we have to put that meaningful activity first to rewrite the conditioning behavior. And we have to keep stacking that up over time. It's a challenging process because it's scary, because everyone has told you we're going to do these things, but it's going to be dictated off of your pain. So we'll do this, but if you have moderate pain, back away. If you start to feel this, then back away. When the reality is, if we had all those other tests done and we know that we can safely lean into it, then let's lean into it. And a quick example I can provide here, I worked with this one guy who he had low back pain with sciatic type symptoms down his leg. So numbness, tingling, burning, shooting down his leg. And it happened daily when he would walk exactly at 1 mile. And he knew exactly where at this mile that it was going to happen at. So he had testing done. I took him through a bunch of assessments, because if we're going to lean into this, we want to be sure that we can lean into it. Like, we don't want to have any doubts when we go to lean into it. So let's get as much evidence as we can objectively to say that it is okay for us to push into this and damage isn't occurring. So we did all these core tests. We did all these motion tests. He checked out on all of them, did great. And we start to realize that now the response that he's having is a conditioned behavior, because he's walking the same route. And when he's walking that route, he knows that when he gets to this mailbox, that it's a mile. And when he gets to a mile, he knows that this is when my symptoms come on. So what I did is I set up cones. And I had these cones a certain distance apart. And I had him carrying different types of weights, different kettlebells and different front rack carry, overhead carry, suitcase carry, to distract him. Had him walk 1.5 miles. No pain response. So now we start questioning, why are you getting this at 1 mile? Well, it's because you become conditioned to that. When we change the environment, when we change what your focus was on, you no longer had that pain response or that sciatic nerve response. So in that treatment, the solution then became, I want you to walk a different route, one that you don't know. And I don't want you to track it on your watch so that you know when you're at 1 mile. Because I told him afterwards, how do you feel? He goes, oh, I feel great. I go, awesome. You just walked 1.5 miles, carrying an extra 40 kilograms in kettlebells in different positions, taxing your core, and you did great. So you can walk 1 mile and not have these symptoms, but you have to do a different route to start changing that conditioned behavior. And then once that behavior is now changed, now you can go back into it. And going off that example as well, there's another time, Dr. Tim Gabbett, who has become a really good friend and mentor, has a phenomenal course on load management. If you've heard of load management in the NBA or different sports, he really put all the data together to help that explode and really teaches it in a good way. It's like, no, we're not trying to keep athletes out. We're trying to keep them healthy. But he was sharing with us that he travels from Australia around the world to teach courses, and he loves it. But when he gets onto the plane, he was starting to get these sciatic type symptoms, these nerve related symptoms, which are scary. Like if you've had nerve symptoms down your leg or down your arms, it's a scary situation. And we tend to think that something's pinching on this, something's bulging into this. Mechanically, something is creating this nerve pain. And the newer evidence has shown, no, that's not really the case all the time. There's a whole different side to this. So Dr. Tim Gabbett, he started working with a different professional, and the professional brought to light, well, what is your thought when you get on the plane? Because this is when his pain response comes on when he gets on the plane. He goes, well, my first thought is, I'm excited, but I really hope I make it back to see my family. I'm going to a new city that I really don't know anything about, and it's scary. Like even as an adult, even having people in those cities, it's scary to go to a new place. Like if you're in Australia and you're going to Chicago for the first time, you're like, okay, yeah, I've heard something about their pizza, but like, what else? How do I get from the airport to my hotel? Is my hotel near the conference center? How am I going to get there and back? Am I going to be able to actually connect with people? And then am I going to be able to fly back to the other side of the world to be with my family again? So these are the thoughts that are going through his head that was bringing on those sciatic symptoms. Mm-hmm. So once he then recognized it, he realized, wow, I need to change my thought pattern because my thought pattern is now creating this conditioned behavior. Change his thoughts. Now that doesn't happen as much anymore. Mm-hmm. It can still happen if his head gets into that thought pattern, but he's creating new and new conditioned behaviors to now decrease that response. So we see it in chronic pain. We see it in chronic conditions. We see it when people start taking food groups away, that they're being told, well, you can't have that because your body's having that reaction to it. Well, now you've just become conditioned to that. And maybe the behavior that your body is responding to is because of what you've been told and what you've been led to believe versus physiologically what's actually happening in the human body. Mm-hmm. So long answer, but I hope that covers it.
Yeah, no, that's a phenomenal answer. And I think that, like for me personally, when I was going through my chronic pain, I thought that I'd always have my chronic pain, right? And during that time, I wasn't seeing a doctor consistently or anything because the doctor situation that I had back when I was a teenager and I was first diagnosed was just kind of dumpy, to be honest. And so, they did the best that they could, but like kind of just were like, we don't know. And then I stopped going to a doctor. And so during those years of not really going to a doctor but having chronic pain, I wouldn't do a lot of things in fear of it flaring up. Mm-hmm. My foot injuries, but then also with back like pain as well. And so there were times where I wouldn't do much, but then I got to a place where, to be honest, I was just kind of sick of not being myself. And I would sacrifice and I would say, I'm okay with having extra pain today if playing basketball is going to be joyful in the moment. But I would go into that knowing this might take me out for the next 3 days. But I really, looking back, I think the thing that helped me heal and conquer my chronic pain was being able to go into basketball and say, I'm going to play basketball and I'm going to feel great after it. So my prediction initially was I'm going to play basketball, but for the next 3 days, I'm going to feel like inflammation and pain in my back and my feet. Now it's, I'm going to go play basketball and I'm going to love it and I'm going to feel great tomorrow. And I think like that helped me a lot whenever I was going through it. And there's still times where obviously I feel sore. Soreness is different than, the extreme chronic pain that I was feeling back then. But to answer, Abby's question, there are times where I couldn't push through. Like I really couldn't push through. And I was upset with myself for that. And I think that if someone's in a season where they feel like they can't push through, let yourself be gracious to yourself and don't be mad at yourself. Because if you're mad at yourself when you're not pushing through, like that's not helping anything.
Right.
But if you can say, it's going to be a rough day and I'm going to accept it and I'm okay with it, that's going to actually help the healing process more. But like Dylan said, Dylan's a doctor, so he has more of the doctoral ways that he's going to explain it, where I'm going to explain it in my like human experience. And I think that's why we balance, in this podcast so well, because you're going to explain the acute pain versus the chronic pain. And I'm just going to kind of share my personal story and hope that it inspires someone, but then you're sharing your story too. But I think that there's, there are days where you need to push through. There are days where you don't need to push through depending on where you're at. But we hope that we can give you more information so that you can kind of look at the broader picture too.
Yeah. And it's a couple points from that it's appropriate. Like we offer hope coaching if someone wants hope coaching to learn more about that. That's individualized to them. Like we offer that because we want people to be back to this. We, as a developed nation, have the highest rate of chronic pain and chronic illnesses. And we're a developed nation. We're supposed to have the best technology, the best medicines, the best food, the best things to help people. And it's really not the case because our system has placed transactions over transformation. We consume 80% of the worldwide opioid supply. We consume 99% of the world hydrocodone supply. And we have the highest rate of chronic pain. But why is this thing being offered to people? Because of the money that's being made from it. So people are being given this thing, but they're not being educated on what is a pain experience. When do you lean into this versus respecting that signal? And that's our goals. We really want to get people that. You don't need the opioids. You don't need all these other things. You need community. You need gratitude. You need mental fortitude. You need forgiveness. You need movement. You need sleep. And if you have those things, you're going to do really well. You're not going to just manage this chronic condition. You're going to get out of that chronic condition. There's research showing that there's 26 different chronic diseases that could be completely prevented with just movement. Not even like diving into diet, not diving into gratitude or forgiveness, but just movement. So now let's combine movement with sleep, with gratitude, with forgiveness, with all these practices. Wow, we have a really good shot to live a high quality, fulfilled life that isn't riddled and ruled by chronic disease. And to the other point for Courtney or anyone else that's listening to this is that if we are struggling, like we do something and we need to pull back, there's other opportunities to lean in that day. For example, you say, you know what? I've had it. I'm going to go play basketball. So you go and play basketball and you have a great time and you loved it. But now your foot's yelling at you. That next day may not be wise for you to go play basketball again. But you don't have to lean in just to the movement side. Now you have this response that's talking to you. And instead of just trying to shut it down, because that's what opioids do, they just try to shut down the signal. That's what ibuprofen does. It shuts down the signal. That's what modalities do. They shut down the signal, but they don't actually treat the cause of what's creating those symptoms. On those days, what we can do is lean in to what your body's trying to tell you. Lean into that pain. The way that I like to explain this with clients is that you are the CEO of your system. And when you come into this life as a CEO, you say, I have an open door policy. Come and talk to me if things aren't going well, which is what all good CEOs do. They come down onto the floor, the distribution lines. They live the life that the employees are living. They go back to their office and they try to make things better for them. So now you're the CEO of your system. You said that you want to have an open door policy, but yet when an employee comes in to tell you something, you're slamming the door in their face saying, I don't want to listen to that right now. That's what we're doing when we have pain and we're taking opioids and doing all these other things to try to get rid of it instead of leaning into what it's trying to tell you. So how many years have you been slamming that door on that pain signal's face? How long is it before that employee no longer even wants to talk to the CEO? I don't care what you're telling me. I don't care because you're not changing anything. And what happens when the employee gets really, really cranky? We're going to form a union. We're going to go on strike and we're going to form picket signs and we're going to be yelling at you. There's our chronic pain. It's the employees that are gotten so angry with you not listening to it that they're starting to form to go against you. So now as a CEO, you have to open up that door. And you're going to open up that door and those employees are going to be like, I don't know. You said this before. I don't know if I trust this. And you have to say, no, this time it's different. I really want to hear what you have to say. Come into my office. Let's sit down. What is that request for change that you're asking for? Let's go back to the moment that I didn't give you that change. What was the environment? What were the colors? What were the smells? What were the sensations I had? What was happening at that point in my life? Let's experience those things. Let's listen to the employees, which is the nerve cells coming up to the brain, talking to the brain, and the brain giving that processing back. But let's talk to these things and figure out what is it that they're actually asking for, and then how can we deliver that? So it's not just about leaning into hardcore movement. It's leaning in to the memories, the experiences, the things that have led up to this event, because we have a threshold for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So what stacked up to get to that threshold that your body is now yelling at you?
Right. And, Courtney or Abby didn't specifically say pain, right? She didn't say, what are the bad symptoms of this injury. She just said bad symptoms, right? And so I love this example because maybe the bad symptoms don't have to do with an injury, like a physical injury. It could be, OCD. It could be an eating disorder. It could be a lot of things, right? But I think that this example of the CEO is exactly what we are like. That's the answer for no matter what you're going through. It doesn't have to be a physical injury. It can be any of those things.
Yeah, and then back to wrapping this answer up, this long-winded answer. The wise old farmer. When we have symptoms, we don't know if it's good or bad.
Yeah.
Because it's a request for change, and that request for change may be a really good thing. Oftentimes when we see people and they're in a lot of pain, something major in their life has happened that they're not dealing with. Mm-hmm. They're not grieving. They're not facing it directly. They're compartmentalizing it, sweeping it under the rug and saying, well, I'll exercise it away. I'll run it away. Oftentimes that's what I'm asking runners. Are you running for something, or are you running from something? Because if you're running from something, eventually running's going to be taken away from you and you're going to be stuck with those thoughts again. So now if you don't have coping strategies, well, how do we start to work on those coping strategies? By all means, let's get back to running because you love that and it is a healthier coping mechanism, but we need to kind of lift up that rug, unsweep what's underneath it, face it, and then we can move forward. Then we can decide if it's a good or bad thing.
And I hesitate saying this, but I'm going to say it anyways. I even challenge listeners to maybe not label it good and bad, because when we label something bad, I think our body processes that very extreme and very negatively. Like, you are good. Who you are is good. Your body is good. Don't label that or whatever symptoms with the word bad, because it goes against our nature of who we are as human beings. And so sometimes I'll, instead of saying bad, I'll say rough or challenging, or name it for what it is, rather than just saying, oh, my bad symptoms. Like, no, you're good. Don't disassociate, and let's become whole.
Absolutely.
Which I feel like we could talk for like 13 hours about that. So we should probably move on.
But it's such an important message of that you are incredible and that you are awesome and that you are good and you're always good. We're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have mess ups. That doesn't define you as being a bad person. We're all good people. And we just need to lean into that a little bit. And I love that language of, I'm a good person, but I'm struggling today. I'm a good person, but maybe I shouldn't have said that thing. Like that's okay. You're still a good person.
Yeah, exactly. So our next question is from a person named Michael. And he says, I've had some foot issues when running, and I've heard that I should switch shoes. I've also heard before that barefoot shoes reduce running injuries. Should I wear minimalist shoes or barefoot shoes? Like, what's the best option for that?
Thank you, Michael, for that question. And I'm blown away because Brandi doesn't let me know the questions beforehand. She gets them from the listener, she preps it, and then when we're recording, this is the first time that I'm seeing the questions. So in the beginning, we were talking about the hope story with the kiddos. And that last example, I don't know why, but my brain went to running. And then it went to this question with running shoes. Really cool. So it's cool how this is coming up. But this is very common. And it's another question that I'm going to lay the groundwork for. But this idea of running shoes and that I need the exact right, correct running shoe and able to do this activity. And the reason I'm not able to do this and I'm having pain is because I have the wrong footwear. There's so much research, there's so much money out there. So let me give the quick answer. How do you pick the best running shoe? When I was younger, we used to go school shopping in the summer to get new shoes, new clothes for the first day of school. And the first day of school, you had to be looking fresh. You had to come in looking good. Second day, gym shorts, tank top, didn't matter. But that first day had to be on point. So you go to the store, and what do? You put on the shoe, you tie it, and you sprint around the store as fast as you can. Like to the point that Dick's Sporting Goods made a track in their shoe area because they knew that this is how kids behave. I put shoes on, I see if I can run fast in them. If I can run fast in them, these are my shoes for the year. If I can't run fast in them and they're clunky, they're the wrong shoe. So how do you pick the right shoe? You use the fast shoe test. Put it on, does it feel good? Run, and then if it doesn't feel good, ship it back. And most running shoes have that, where you can have them for like a week or so. If it doesn't feel good on your foot, go ahead and then send them back. But this idea of minimalist shoes and barefoot running, it really exploded after the book Born to Run came out. What this basically was this author went down to this place in Mexico where this tribe was running ultra marathons, like day after day after day. They're running through the mountains, they're running on rocks, they're running in terrible terrain, and they're doing it barefoot. None of them had running injuries. So he started documenting and observing. And what he had mentioned in part of the book was that he thought that their decreased risk of injury or not having injury was because they were wearing no shoes. And that because we have all these updated shoes in developed worlds, this is where running injuries are coming from. So that exploded in America because we have a huge running population. It exploded in the UK as well. But we have this big running population that said, oh, I have running pain because my shoes have too much cushion in them, so I need to go barefoot. So I'm gonna wear this minimalist shoe. So ESPN did a 30 for 30 where they went down and talked to the tribe. It's hysterical. If you've read that book, Born to Run, go see the other side of the story on this 30 for 30 documentary, because they talked to the main runner and they showed him Americans running in minimalist shoes and barefoot shoes. And he started laughing hysterically. And they're like, why are you laughing? And he goes, we only run in barefoot shoes because we can't afford any other shoes. If we could run in those shoes, like that'd be great, but we don't have the resources to do that. The other thing that this 30 for 30 brings to light is that we tend to run recreationally for some purpose, whether it's running from something or for something. They're running because their belief system is that once they complete this run, and oh yeah, when they're running, they're kicking a wooden ball between each other the entire run. So it's like an ultra marathon of kicking this wooden ball that they've made through the mountains, through this terrain. Their belief system is that in doing so, that the God that they believe in will bring rain to their land. If there's rain, then they can grow crops, which means that they can have food. Like this area there, it's just riddled by poverty. So their belief system is that by doing this spiritual act, we'll then be rewarded to take care of our people and to survive. If that is your reason, it does not matter what's on your feet. You will finish that run because it's your belief of your life being at stake. So then where do we fall on this minimalist shoe thing in developed worlds? And from the way I'm talking about it, you're probably getting a good idea of it. But the reason is because it's misunderstood. When you're wearing a minimalist shoe, more of the running force is going to your foot and ankle. When you're wearing a cushioned shoe, more of that force is going to your knee and to your hip. So both have a time and place. If I want more force on my foot and ankle, minimalist shoe. If I want more force at my knee and my hip, I'm going to go with a more cushioned shoe. So where we can get creative with runners, and so what creates running injuries? It's not footwear. It's not supination. It's not pronation. It's not your foot strike. It's not any of that. It's have you built up to the level that you're running at? And are you switching up your distances? So basically, are you doing too much of the same thing for too long? Or are you doing too much of something too soon? If you're a distance runner, sprinkle in some sprinting. Because talking about running mechanics, if you want to improve your mechanics, run faster. Your body will self-organize and correct. You don't need to go on a treadmill and have 5 different cameras looking at your angles. Run faster and your body will correct it. Because the last thing you want to do is be running and going, okay, let's stay upright. Let's swing my right arm. Let's lift my left leg up. Let's kick my leg out. Let's strike my forefoot down and now let's rock forward on that. No, you just want to run. So if you want to fix your cadence, you want to fix your running mechanics, run faster, shorter distances. If you're a sprinter, make sure that you're doing a lot of strength activity to withstand that activity. And then in your off season, start to get some distance, like 400 meters in. That's a lot for a sprinter. Trust, I'm a sprinter, distance running crushes me. 400 meters is enough. That's distance in the sprinting world. So with the running shoes too, back from injuries, if you're having a foot and ankle injury, then get a more cushioned shoe. If you're having a knee injury or hip injury, get more of a minimalist shoe if you need to keep running. There's research from the Scandinavian Journal of Sports Medicine. I forgot what year it came out in, but the running in this cohort, the running injuries were reduced, I think it was 49%, just by them alternating shoes through the week. So that's my take on it. Make sure you've built up enough capacity to be doing the activity that you're doing. Ask yourself about the load management. Make sure that you have shoes that you feel fast in. And if you need to have some different shoes, just make sure they're different. One minimalist, one with cushion. Like Nike Vaporflies, great shoes. If minimalist shoes or barefoot shoes were the answer, then why wouldn't we be seeing the world records broken in minimalist shoes? The world records are being broken in Vaporflies and these other cushion shoes because of the return energy that you get back from running.
Right. Thank you for that answer. That's awesome. Our next question is from a listener named Pauline. She says, someone I know has had great accomplishments through high school. However, since this time, which was 23 years ago, life has been a struggle. I continue to have hope for this person. I have listened, suggested, offered, paid for therapy, and more, but nothing has worked. What should I do?
Wow. That is a tough question. It's a great question. Thank you, Pauline. And thank you, Michael, for that question,
Yes.
the previous one, and Abby for the earlier one. I think I called it Courtney, but
it's okay.
Thank you for sending those in. Pauline, that is a tough question. And we talked about this on one of the episodes. It's difficult to be that person that is really, you're showing up for this person. You're doing everything that you can do for this person because you love them and you know their potential and you want to see them reach. And I'm going to come at this from a different angle or different kinds of angles and perspective. But in these situations, we have to start asking, what is the accomplishments that they want versus what are the accomplishments that we want to see? Because if you're showing up, you're paying for these things, the resources are available, and they're not acting on it, it might be because they don't want to. Like that's not their goal. And we see this a lot in really accomplished high school athletes or valedictorians, like people that really pushed in high school and did really well and got all these accomplishments. But what happens when you start to stack up these accomplishments? You start to realize that you put all this work into it. You may have enjoyed it, but you probably didn't because of how hard you worked at it. And then once you got that award, you weren't fulfilled. So then you start realizing what really matters around me. And for some people, it might be, yeah, you know what? I have my high school receiving record. I have a points record. I did these cool things in high school. But what fulfills me now is being a good friend. What fulfills me now is being a good husband. What fulfills me now is being a good dad, a good wife, whatever it may be. But their definition of accomplishment and fulfillment may be different than what you're seeing or what you're seeking. So I think I would want to have that conversation with that person of, what do you want to accomplish in this life? What do you want your legacy to be? Like, the one thing that is guaranteed is that this is rented space. This life is not infinite. It is finite, and we don't know when our time is that we're gonna leave the earth. We don't know that, but our legacies have the impact to last a lifetime. So, what is the legacy that you want to leave? And I remember seeing this in a paper at some point. Who won the Grammy in 2020? I don't know. Who won the ESPY for the best athlete in 2018? I don't know. But I can tell you that my high school basketball coach was super meaningful to me, and he showed up for me, and he taught me values. So that is a huge accomplishment. It's not rewarded on paper. It's not rewarded with a medal or with money, but it's a legacy that he has now left. So I think I'd want to talk to him, what is, or him or her, and say, what is the legacy that you want to leave? Do you feel fulfilled? Do you feel like you're enough? Because if that's the case, awesome. We just need to know that. If that's not the case, the other thing might be fear. I see this a lot when people have had a work injury or previously when I was working clinically in workers' comp, well, or on disability. If I get off of disability and I don't have these symptoms anymore, and I love the thought of who I could become, but is that going to pay the bills?
Mm.
Like, I'm on disability and it's become my life because I talk to people and I say, hey, this is my name, this is my disability. And then when I do that, the system gives me money. And when the system gives me money, then I can provide for my family. So I hear what you're saying and I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the support and I appreciate the counseling and I appreciate all the resources you're pouring into this. But I need to look out for my family. I need to look out for my livelihood. Now, we know that on the other side of this, you're going to have a much more fulfilled life and that financially, you're going to be gifted way more than you ever thought or imagined.
Mm-hmm.
But taking that leap of faith is incredibly difficult. So then we have to look at this and say, well, is this person not moving forward because of the fear that they have to give up something that has been able to get them to where they're at now?
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are the two categories I would think of. Anything to
Yeah,
add?
yeah, I think too, and Pauline, I feel for you. I feel sympathy for you because there are times where you want so much for someone else, and whether they're afraid or not ready, or in the case that I was thinking as you were talking, they just don't think that way. Like I think that I'm a very goal-oriented person. I love to dream, I love to envision, and I love to work hard for those things. But I know people in my life that is just not the way they operate. And they are a very and I think when I'm like juiced up, I think that it's lazy, but really they might just be content with where they're at. And as someone who, for me, I want to like go for that next thing, and not in an unhealthy way, but like I just am that way. Seeing their contentment or what I might perceive as their complacency can really like bother me or bother someone who might be similar to myself. But so I feel for you, Pauline, because maybe that person is in that realm, and you just want so much for them, but really they're just saying, "Nah, I'm good." And I think that that is just really hard. And so I
Yeah.
feel for you if that's the case, or the case to anyone else listening, because you want so much for that other person. And I think Dylan's right. There's a level of having conversations with them. What do you want to accomplish? What are your goals? What are your dreams? But some people don't really have that. Like they don't think about the legacy that they want to leave.
Yeah.
And so the conversation is actually could be very helpful because maybe they don't respond and maybe they're just like, what are you talking about? And they don't care. But it might be that one sentence that at least gets their brain moving a little bit to where maybe they will start thinking about that. Or I know there's situations in our life where it's like, well, once the kids are out of the house, maybe I'll start dreaming again. And it's like, well, no, you can have a really great and fulfilled life now too. But maybe they think their life is as fulfilled as it can get. Every situation is so different. And I think the biggest thing, as the person asking, Pauline, like for you, it's being okay with whatever their answer is. Especially if you've been in their journey for the past 23 years. And this might sound hard, but like you might not be the person that's going to get them to that next level that you desire for them, and that's okay. Because there's still hope, but sometimes it's not your role, even if you really want it to be your role. But then in other times, it's just, you might plant seeds for the next 50 years. You might pass, and then maybe that's the thing that motivates them. Who know? Like, who really knows? But have hope, plant seeds, and be optimistic that if you're not the person, there is another person there.
Yeah, for sure. It comes down to the discussion of, can you be fulfilled but not satisfied? Can you be satisfied but not fulfilled? And then what is happiness? And true happiness, like, I think we feel happy from time to time. We feel joy from time to time. But true happiness is the state of not wanting anything more because you're so grateful with the abundance that surrounds you.
Mm.
And when a person's in that state, they don't care too much about accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
All they care about is the abundance that surrounds them. And that's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah.
If someone's in that state, I would debate that we don't want to shift them from that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we can look at that and see, like, where is this person sitting? Are they in the state of true happiness, of the state of not wanting anymore? Are they, in the state of maybe they're satisfied but not fulfilled? So how do we go about that? Or is it because of fear? And then depending on which bucket they're in, that's going to help improve the chances of them moving in some direction.
Yeah. Great question, Pauline. And Michael and Abby, thank you all so much for those those questions. I feel like we could answer and take one question and talk for like 45 minutes. And so we're thankful for this little bit of time. And listeners, please consider sending us your questions at our website, hopenotnope.org. We really desire to get more questions and share our input and hopefully guide you to be empowered and have more hope. And please also rate and share this podcast on Apple, on Spotify, even on YouTube. We want to get the message out. We want to spread this message of hope. And so please consider doing that as well.
Have a great week. And remember, every day is not just a day to be hopeful. It's an opportunity to become hope.